Starting now, you can get a transcript of each week's Rich Dad radio show. Just visit www.richdad.com/radio and download a copy today.
This is the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. Here's Robert Kiyosaki.
Hello. It's Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. So we have a very, very interesting show for you, especially if you're wondering about, and we're always talking about the future here, but more importantly, your money and where you're going to put it. You can put it in Bitcoin, Ethereum, Zipcoin. You can put it in stocks, your 401k, or real estate. So that's who we're going to be talking about today. What do you do with your money? And one of the reasons it's an important show is simply because it's 2018. Stock market went past 26,000, the Dow. And they say it never went so fast. And everybody's getting excited. So I was watching Bubble Vision, Financial News Network. So they have this ETF guy. He is the head of the ETF Association of the World or something. He says, keep going. It's going to keep going. Buy some more. Jump into emerging markets. Jump into this. Jump into that. Don't worry. It'll work. And then on another station, same kind of Bubble Vision, Sam Zell comes on. And Sam Zell is an old-timer like me. And Sam Zell sits there and he says, what does this remind you of? He says, this reminds me of 1999. And he goes, why does it remind you of that? Remember there was a company called Cisco? Everybody was in Cisco. And the guy says, what does that mean to you? Everybody's in Amazon today. And Amazon's this machine that's gobbling up everything. So basically, Sam Zell was saying what we've always said at Rich Dad Radio and all this, is that every boom has a bust and every bust goes to a boom. And the problem is at the top of a market, people jump in. The amateurs come sucked in at the top. When, for those who listen to us in the meantime, is that I like the bottom. I like it when it crashes because it's more exciting down there. And the best investments are dirt cheap. But we're going to be talking today the difference between stocks and real estate. Because a lot of people say, well, I'm just going to jump into real estate. Well, it's okay to jump into stocks, and we'll tell you why. But it's really stupid to jump into real estate. Any comments, Kim?
Well, this is one of our favorite subjects is real estate, and we've got two experts here in the studio with us today, and we're going to actually be talking about, we've got 2018, what's unfolding, what are we looking at? We've got all these new tax bills that have come out, and where's the market going? And as you said, as soon as the market starts taking off and going higher and higher, everybody jumps in, which is exactly not the thing to do. So we're going to give some reality on what really is going on out there today.
So our guest today, our longtime Rich Dad advisor and dear friend and partner in many, many, many deals is Ken McElroy. And the person that runs Kenny in his life is Leslie. And she is the best because this is the point. We have Kenny and Leslie. Kenny, what would happen if you invested in a property without Leslie?
And let me just explain. Ken McElroy, he's our Rich Dad advisor on real estate, founder of MC Companies. He's the author of the ABCs of Real Estate Investing, the ABCs of Property Management, and the Advanced Guide to Real Estate Investing. And Leslie Bryce is partner and president of MC Residential Communities, and she is, talk about the expert in hands-on property management and all realms of real estate. So we got the two experts here. We're excited.
Right. So the thing is, Kenny, can somebody just buy real estate without property management?
No, people do that all the time, and and that's actually typically how they lose their money.
Yeah, the buying of the property is actually the easy part. It's the property management where the money is either made or lost, right?
It's always, before we buy anything, as you know, we already know, well, we're projecting out 2-3 years on what the return is, and the only way a business is investing is a team sport. That's why Leslie's here. That's why she's a partner and president of our company.
She's the brains too.
She is, yeah. And so we get everyone together before we make a purchase. Everyone.
Well, I think what a lot of people don't understand is every single piece of property is a business in itself.
It is. We looked at 600 deals last year and made offers on 60. And on all 60 deals, we had a number of people weigh in on those offers, on how we underwrote them, how they're going to operate. Because before we go raise money, which is the next thing that we do, we want to make sure that all the numbers are correct and the market's correct, and all our assumptions are correct.
So let me get, before I bring Leslie on, the reason this is so important is because Kenny and I have done talks all over the world with some good times and some bad times out there, and some funny things. But we've had people come up and say, "Oh, when the stock market was down, they said, oh, just jump into real estate." The point here, there's a very large difference between real estate and stocks. If you're in, this is the big difference. It's called liquidity. If you jump into, let's say I buy Amazon, and it's a mistake, I can buy in the morning and sell 10 minutes later. I'm out. But the moment you buy a piece of property, you almost can't get out, especially if it starts going down. And so the whole point of this, when somebody tells you, oh, jump in and buy real estate, they're nuts. Don't listen to them. With that said, the key here is whether the profit is made or lost is in property management. And Kim and I have known Leslie for years with tremendous respect for her. We've traveled to China together and all this, and it's always been a blast and fun. But most important, the happiest days of our lives is when
the check comes in.
Leslie hands us a check. And they're getting bigger and bigger every year.
Those
So
are
with
my
that
favorite
said-
times, too.
So with that said, Leslie, welcome to the show. And could you give people a little bit of your background on how did you become a property manager, which then leads to becoming president? Because real estate is about management.
Well, sure. Thanks for having me and having Ken. We really enjoy being involved with you guys. Property management, it wasn't something I set out to do. It was really interesting as I was getting out of high school. I wanted to get a job for the summer and started working at an apartment property. And I in between that time and going to college, I decided that was the right place for me to go.
Same as you, Kenny, right?
Right out of
Yeah,
high school.
very similar.
Ken went to college and was able to work through that through college. But for me, it was just right out of high school. It worked great because I had a young family, and we were
already
very
married?
very young. Not married, but I was starting a family just out of high school. So we decided that was a great path. I ended up loving what I was doing, and years later, because I've been doing this for 30 years. Years later, I look back and I just there's no 2 days the same. So I enjoy it so much that I don't miss that formal education. For me, my education was on the job.
Correct. So where was this property?
The property that I started on is that Phoenix, actually. It was a 1,200 unit property in Phoenix.
1,200?
1,222 units.
And what was your position?
Paradise Lakes. They wouldn't let me lease. They allowed me to collect rent from folks
right.
and write work orders. So I was relegated to giving service to the current residents that were at the property, and was able to move up and around into the different departments there. It was great because I got to feel what each of the departments were and to understand a little bit more. But
Could you give us an idea of some of the different departments? Because, even Trump talks about it. Some of the best experience he had or education was collecting rent.
Well, it's such a good question because it appears like it's a really easy job to do, but there are so many different aspects. On a 1,200 unit property, we had to have a department for rent collection, for maintenance, for leasing apartments, for tending to the current residents and just renewing
How about
leases.
evictions?
Evictions, for sure. That was a major part of what we did, is collecting rent and holding folks accountable for paying rent on time. Which led to more sales and leasing, and around and round we went.
I remember going to was it in Texas, the property that we went to, and you had this great idea on people that were paying rent late, and you're not going to learn this in school, but they were paying rent. They were paying rent late, and you wanted them to pay on time. So you organized that on the day rent was due, you'd have a little breakfast for everybody. And they would come to the office, and they would get their coffee and juice and their muffin and their croissants, and they would pay the rent. And they couldn't get breakfast unless they gave you a check.
That's right.
I mean, that's like simple
of-
strategies.
Yeah.
Did that work?
I thought it was great.
For sure. Well, and we did lease renewals in the same way because you want to continue their residency. One of the best ways to be profitable is to renew your current renter's lease. so
Right.
that you don't have turnover. You end up spending so much less on advertising and turning the apartment.
Fixing
Repairs.
up.
You bet.
Yep.
So having the same kind of social interaction, and social interaction is one of the best things about property management, multifamily property management, and the fact that we get folks together. People are now, they're renting by choice more than they used to because they
What do you
love
mean renting by choice?
renting by choice rather than buying a home.
Oh, okay.
Home
Oh,
ownership
okay.
rates have changed over the years. A lot of, you look at the type of renters that we have, the millennials in particular, they don't want to be saddled with a mortgage, and they don't want to have to mow lawn. And so they like to cohabitate with folks that they can be social with. And so these apartment properties, we focus a lot on service to the customer in that way.
Remember that there was this one guy, Mr. Real Estate or something. His saying was, if you renewed the first year, you got, let's say, a toaster.
Oh,
And you
right.
renewed the second year, you got this. But the third year, you got a TV. And he says people would stay for 3 years to get that TV that cost them $195. And he says, I mean, Kenny, $195 for no turnover for 3 years. What's that worth to you?
It's incredible. I mean, when somebody moves out, you have to clean it, you have a lot of maintenance, you have to usually paint it, and then you have to advertise it, and then you have to pay somebody to lease it. So the costs
commission,
are in
right?
the thousands.
And we actually implemented that on one of our properties, and what we decided is what can we give them that we need in the apartment anyway. So if they renewed the first year, they got a ceiling fan because we wanted to put ceiling fans in. So it was an incentive for them to stay, and it helped us because we had to do it anyway.
Excellent.
Yeah, it's better to spend money on the apartment
Yes.
and give them something.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we do
But
that too.
it's really interesting. It doesn't take much brain power to think about it. Okay, a TV set after 3 years, they kind of grow into the apartment by then. So anyway, we're talking to Ken McElroy and Leslie Bryce. We're talking about the difference between real estate and stocks, and the markets are really high right now. And just to be realistic, okay, all markets go up and all markets come down. And so personally, people are talking about let's jump into stocks because the Dow went over 26,000 and real estate's hot, and everywhere around where we're broadcasting from today in Old Town Scottsdale with all these apartment houses. But when Kim and I met Kenny and Leslie years ago, nobody was in apartment houses. The apartment houses were the dogs of real estate. Right, Kim?
Oh yeah, there was nobody in that market, and that was fun because we had a lot to choose from at that point. But now everybody's in multifamily.
So we come back, we'll be talking more to Ken and Leslie. And Ken, we're talking about, for those of you who are really serious thinking about whether you should go into your 401k and stocks or should you go into real estate, right now it's a good time to listen because real estate has some of the highest advantages in ROI, return on investment, but also the biggest problems. We'll be right back.
You're listening to The Rich Dad Radio Show with Robert Kiyosaki.
Don't be like Charlie. Charlie is that do-it-yourselfer who does himself in. Do-it-yourself is good for tile and grout. It is not good for asset protection. Charlie thought he'd save a few dollars forming his LLC online. With no guidance, he did it wrong. When he sold the property, he lost thousands and thousands of dollars. He did himself in by trying to do it himself. Don't burn yourself. Use Corporate Direct to set up and maintain your LLCs and corporations. Corporate Direct is owned and operated by attorney and rich dad advisor Garrett Sutton. Garrett wrote the bestsellers Loopholes of Real Estate and Start Your Own Corporation. He is Robert Kiyosaki's attorney for asset protection. He and his team will do it right. Visit them at corporatedirect.com or call 800-600-1760. Mention Rich Dad and receive $100 off your formation fee. That's corporatedirect.com. corporatedirect.com.
Log on to richdadradio.com while you listen. Now back to Robert Kiyosaki.
Welcome back, Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. You can listen to the Rich Dad Radio Show anytime, anywhere, in Android or iTunes. And all of our programs are archived at richdadradio.com. And if you listen to this again, if you have friends, family, or business associates especially, or somebody who thinks they're going to be a real estate investor, especially a flipper, you should listen to this program because real estate is a different Magilla. It's a different animal. And the reason I asked Ken McElroy is author of ABCs of Real Estate Investing, ABCs of Property Management, and The Advanced Guide to Real Estate Investment, and Leslie Bryce is partner and president of MC Residential Companies, which is Kenny's companies, is that real estate is a different animal. It's not like the stock market. And there's one big word that is the difference. It's called liquidity. Again, I'll say it again. If you buy Amazon this morning, you can be out in 10 minutes. The moment you buy that piece of property, you have an albatross around your neck. And the key to real estate investing is property management. And both Kenny and Leslie got their start in property management, which is why they're so successful. And that's why Kim and I make the big bucks investing with them, because it's property management. You know, you can buy a great property and lose everything. I've seen guys do that. But a bad property can turn into a great property due to property management.
Yeah, so Leslie, let me ask you this, because I heard this the other day. Some guy was pitching how anybody can get into investment real estate, and his comment was, hey, if you have bought a house in your lifetime, if you've bought a personal residence, then you know enough about real estate that you can become a real estate investor. What would you say to that?
Well, I would say right now it makes no sense at the top of the market to be buying, first of all. But secondly, to think that you can flip a multifamily property, or any property for that matter, is not true.
But
So if somebody,
but isn't an investment property very different from a residential, personal residence?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Our
if
personal
I'm a
residence makes
homeowner,
no sense.
if I'm a homeowner, do I know anything about investment real estate?
You don't. You don't have to deal with tenants in your own home. And the fact is, if you buy an investment property, you've got to be prepared for the maintenance that comes with it, the financial responsibility that comes with managing
How about evictions?
a home, evictions.
And people not paying you, and the law.
You bet.
And
There's
taxes.
so many ways to discriminate against someone. You have to know how to lease to someone and how to avoid getting into legal hot water where that's concerned.
So let me just say this, okay? I'm going to get into this. Rich Dad is an educational company. We don't sell real estate or stocks or mutual funds or bitcoins. But Kenny is the author of the ABCs of Real Estate Investing. If you're really thinking about investing in real estate, buy that book. Start with that book. The second book is the ABCs of Property Management, probably the most important of the two books. But you have to have the first before the second. And his third book is The Advanced Guide to Real Estate Investing. The Advanced Guide is how Kenny, with the associate of his whole team, is able to return infinite returns. I mean, Kim and I make millions and millions of dollars with Kenny and Leslie and pay very little in taxes. But you don't just get to do that because you bought a house. Do you know what I mean? There is a process. So if my whole message in this program today is that if you do not want to buy these three books, don't invest in real estate. Or if you're not willing to take a real estate class, don't invest in real estate. I'll say it again. The key word is liquidity. The moment you buy a stock, you can get out the split second. Real estate, you can't do that. If it starts to go down, it gets worse. Right, Leslie?
I agree.
We've some of the best properties we bought when somebody mismanaged a property, like San Antonio, right?
Yeah, well, we look for broken properties. We look for properties that are mismanaged. That's actually our target. We want to find things that we can fix.
Where people like me ran it before you.
Yeah, that's
And
right.
I just want to say, once you've read the books, once you've taken a course and you are ready to get courses and you are ready to invest, start small.
I think the biggest issue between a stock and real estate is the difference between an individual and a team. And I think it takes only one person, an individual, to buy a stock. But to buy real estate, it takes a team.
Right. What are some of the, let me ask Kenny, what are some of the things the average start out doesn't even think about?
Basically everything. No, really, it's so complex. There's leases. There's a bunch of legal issues. There's the tenants themselves. There's how you evaluate them. There's how you manage them. There's how you manage the maintenance part of it. There's how you handle the banks and the insurance and the reserves. And there's just so many things in the financial statements and, to see whether it's cash flowing or not. And the last thing you look at is it going up?
The last thing you look
The
at,
last
not
thing.
the first thing.
The price of the
And
value.
that's what everybody looks
what
at first.
Right.
they say, okay, I can buy this house for $200,000 and I can sell it for $250,000. That's the last thing we look at. We of course look at that because it's important. We want to buy in a market that's trending up. But the truth is, it's a business. There's somebody moving into an asset that you own, and you owe them a lot of respect and management of their environment. They're paying you for that. So these are people don't think of this, but every single if you're renting for $1,000 and you have a year lease, that's a $12,000 contract with somebody.
Right.
That's significant.
Yeah. That's why we say start small, because you can read about it and you get an understanding of it, but until your feet hit the ground and you're facing the fire, so we say start small, because that's where you're going to learn about how to deal with tenants and how to deal with maintenance and how to deal with the legal and the evictions and all that.
And even then, you're going to still learn.
You're going to every day.
And everybody's just giving me the hot tip, because Kenny and I were laughing. There was one friend who was getting his butt handed to him in stocks, and he says, "Oh, don't worry, just buy real estate like Kenny does." And this idiot, he has a PhD in economics. Guy had never bought any real estate in his life, but he just thinks it's the same as a stock. And that's the main point of this show, that if you're not willing to invest in your education first, don't buy real estate.
Well, and I will say something to add on to that, because really, when we look at properties, what I love most about buying an apartment property or a single-family home is when you know how to manage, you can affect a plan that will raise the net operating income, thus the value of the building. If you're just waiting on the market to take you higher, you're in for a very long road.
So the point you're making is, as Kenny said, you buy broken properties or properties with a problem. How do you increase the value? How do you increase the rents? How do you increase the income?
Right.
That's where your forte is.
Even if it's not broken, there may be a play. There always has to be a story or a plan for the property. You may be able to reposition by doing renovations inside.
So you're saying you look for ways to increase the property regardless of whether the value is going up, the market's going up or down.
Agreed. But you have
you in control.
You absolutely must couple that with proper tenant screening and making sure that you're approving the right people to live there, because you may end up losing your money if you don't have the right people living in these.
And you could get sued.
Absolutely.
So we use the word, I'll tell you the word we use internally is forced equity.
Forced?
That's the word we use. So we say,
what does that mean?
That means that's something that we have control of. That means that when we buy a property of 50, 60, 70% occupied, can we take it to 90%? And that's all management, and that's forced. There's then the other term, what a lot of people talk about is market, equity by the market itself. Those are forces that are not within our control.
Kim and I went to San Antonio. What was that place?
Lincoln Green.
God, it was the biggest disaster I'd ever seen in my life.
A 300 vacant on a 680 unit.
And then so Kenny and I walk in to the first unit. The place has been stripped. The guys took all the walls off and took the copper wires out. The toilet was sitting in front of the fireplace. I said, well, this guy had an interesting time looking at the fire on top of his toilet. And I'm out of here. The ceilings are falling in. All the walls are open because they stole all the electrical wiring. I'm out of here. Kenny goes, oh, this is the best deal I've seen in a long time. But that's the difference that makes the difference. I would have run. And the interesting thing was the guy that destroyed the place was the prior owner, right?
Yeah. He essentially ran that thing into the ground, and then the bank foreclosed on him, and we bought it from Bank of America, actually. They did a write-down on the loan.
What does that mean?
Well, it means that the loan at the time was $25 million, and I think we got them to basically write it down to 20. They financed it for 20, and then we put $7.5 million into it, and so we were $27.5 million into that project. I think it's worth well over $50 million today. Maybe close to 60.
And the cash flow is now infinite because we got all of our investment money back, and every month we get a check from Leslie.
That is correct.
Yeah, and it's just fixing it.
Yep, and so it was half unrented, half vacant, and you've both touched on, how do you find a good tenant? What do you have like a little criteria, a small short criteria?
There's one thing that I just want to point out too, that this is not in a bad area. If you remember,
No, it's a great area.
Remember,
San
it's
Antonio,
right across from USAA Insurance,
hospitals,
and a really high-end neighborhood. And so when sometimes when you talk about properties like this, people think, oh, they're buying in the hood, but it's not.
No, it's a great property.
So what are some of the? Give me some key points on how you evaluate a
Very
tenant.
key. One of our most important is, do they have prior experience in renting, and do they pay their rent on time? Verifying that they pay their rent on time and that they have sufficient income to cover their rent.
Also, they have lawsuits against them or
absolutely
criminal charges.
Their credit and their criminal, checking all of those, and not allowing some of those folks to come in. You have to have a fail-safe for that.
But this is the big thing. Is that when you guys bring your hundreds of employees into town once a year and you have these meetings with them, you don't review the numbers. You just talked about the key is those great employees, because holy Mac, Kim and I, that La Loma Vista.
Yes.
Our employees were stealing from us, and we couldn't detect it because the property manager was stealing from us. It took us 2 years to kind of figure it out. So why were our checks going down? Was our employee was stealing from us? Remember that, Kim?
Oh, I remember very clearly, as does Leslie.
So once again, it's Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show. We're talking to Ken McElroy, author of the ABCs of Real Estate Investing, ABCs of Property Management, the Advanced Guide to Real Estate Investing. His website is MC Companies, MCCOMPNIES, and Leslie Price is a partner and president of MC Properties. We'll be right back when we talk more about whether you should stay in your 401k or you should become a big-time property investor.
You're listening to the Rich Dad Radio Show with Robert Kiyosaki.
Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad Advisors have a great gift for you. Visit RichDadAdvisors.com and receive 5 free reports on business and investing success. 5 free reports that can help you right now. And while there, check out the Author's Choice audio series. Audio is a great way to learn. And for as little as 99 cents, you can download key chapters from all the Rich Dad Advisor books. You can listen to The Myths and Magic of Real Estate Investing, 7 Steps to Limited Liability, The 4 Pillars of Investing, Team Code of Honor, or The Psychology of Debt, among other great audios. For pennies, you can power up your skills for getting out of the rat race. So please visit RichDadAdvisors.com for your 5 free reports and your powerful and affordable audio chapters. That's RichDadAdvisors.com for great information that can help you right now.
This is the Rich Dad Radio Show. The good news and bad news about money. Here's Robert Kiyosaki.
Welcome back, Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show. The good news and bad news about money. And there's so much misinformation out there in the market. And I'm just going to say it again. If you're not willing to do the study or the hard work, stay in stocks, bonds, and mutual funds and ETFs. Don't cross the line. Just because you own a house doesn't make you a real estate investor. And the thing I'm concerned about right now is all the signs we're on the verge of 2007 all over again. Because in 2005 and 6, Kim and Kenny and I were laughing because our vacancies were going up because everybody was leaving our apartments, right? And they were becoming
they were homeowners.
Property owners.
In fact, we were actually, they were telling us they were
buying a house.
One, they were people that were delinquent in rent and
people who couldn't qualify to rent.
Yeah, people couldn't qualify were actually going and buying condos and houses, and it was crazy.
And flipping them and doing all that. Yeah. And so it's, we're I'm not saying it's good or bad. I like crashes personally, but the difference here again is the word liquidity. If you get caught when the market's coming down, you can get out of a stock or an ETF or bond and savings. You cannot get out of real estate. It's the hardest thing you can do. So with that said, we're going to go talking about what are the trends in real estate today. So Kenny, what do you see coming?
Well, we're certainly peaking. Capitalization rates are really, really low.
And what does that mean?
That's when you divide the net operating income into the price. And so what you want to do is you want to buy.
What is net operating income?
That's income after expenses.
Minus debt.
So the higher the cap rate,
the better the deal.
Okay.
Yeah.
So a cap rate of 8 is good. Cap rate of 2 is not good.
So capitalization rates are important. I just got an interesting sheet the other day on all the different cap rates for every single sector, from self-storage to industrial to office to multifamily. They're all different. It's important to watch because when you're borrowing money, they're going to look at the exit cap rate, So what are you borrowing at and what are you going to sell at? So we are seeing multifamily peak. I believe it's peaking. And it's, we haven't bought anything recently, not in the last 12 months.
Are real estate prices, across the board, generally going up nationwide?
Not generally, no. We're seeing retail get hit pretty good because of Amazon, and people are buying online, not just from Amazon. But the retailers are hurting, the malls are hurting, and industrial's doing very well because of Amazon and
the
these
big warehouses, things like that.
Yes, the self-storage is doing well. So,
is there an area you guys are looking at that might be like the next opportunity?
We are, we're looking. We're kind of focused on the seniors, that are all the aging population.
That's me.
Yeah. That's why I said it actually.
Kenny promised he's going to build a senior living center, and I can have the penthouse, right?
That's right.
Well, and I just read something interesting about baby boomers, and what they said is what they thought would happen is the baby boomers would retire with all this money and have this life of leisure, but what's really happening is they can't afford to retire, or they're choosing not to retire, and they're not retiring to these leisurely locations.
Yeah, what we're actually seeing is we're seeing a lot of really expensive housing coming on the market because they're downsizing. Okay. So because they're empty nesters now, and their kids are gone, and so they live in these big homes. And
Kim and I live on the Biltmore. A house that sold for $4 million 10 years ago just sold for $2 million.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah,
so that's because there's a lot of that, and so if you think about it, there's going to be a lot more of that. There's no reason to have this. I'm in the same situation. My kids are both in college now, and I have a big house. I don't really need a big house, and so I'll probably downsize, and so. That's happening all over the place. So there'll be a glut of what they call McMansions, all over.
And where else do you see opportunity?
I see opportunity in single-family housing under $500,000. Actually, there hasn't been a lot of new development at all around the country. Oddly enough, if you really think about it, because the lenders are still pretty tight. There has been on multifamily, but with multifamily, we still haven't hit the demand. So we need 350,000 units a year in the nation, and last year we didn't even deliver that. To build, just to keep up with demand. So we still, since the recession, haven't been hit. We have not kept up with demand. So they say there's a 10-year demand in apartments, right? Or 8 years.
8 years.
Well, that's good news for us, right, Leslie?
Agreed. And I think that, based on the way they've tempered the way they've been delivering new units, it's allowing us to have higher occupancies and higher rents as a result of that. Ken had mentioned cap rates earlier. They've remained fairly steady, although compressed from where they were. They've remained fairly steady. So this is maybe a little different from the last economic downturn where, the values were artificially inflated. This is a little bit of a softer landing, but we're starting to see occupancies tick up a little bit, and really for 2018 they're expecting to deliver a good 320,000 units nationwide. That should allow for occupancy to remain fairly high.
And then interest rates, I think interest rates are going to go up. What that does is it lowers the cash flow.
Yeah.
So if you're paying more for your debt and your prices are higher, you're getting less in cash flow.
And how does and without getting into a lot of detail with the whole tax code and all of that, without getting into a lot of detail, is there something that people should be paying attention to?
Well, for us, we fared very well on the apartments. There's almost no change. There was all kinds of stuff on the chopping block for, from carried interest to some of the depreciation schedules. The depreciation schedule did go to 30 years from 27.5. It's insignificant. So we really, really came out of it.
And let me say, if you feel like me, a lot of these things don't make sense to you. That's why it's the third book. It's the Advanced Guide to Real Estate Investing by Kenny. That's the fundamental. If you don't understand what you're talking about, cap rates and NOI and carried interest and all this, look, I'll just say it again. It's not like buying Amazon. It's not like buying a stock. You've got to be a much more sophisticated person. So stay out of real estate unless you're willing to make the commitment to learn. Right, Leslie?
Agreed.
And let me ask you this, because we have a friend of ours whose business is these little strip malls, and the little strip malls, the businesses are closing right, left, and center, and so they're looking at ways to reinvent these strip malls. Do you have any experience in that, or it's
medical marijuana? They're doing everything.
Done and done.
You can grow them in those super Kmart stores.
I know.
What Sears closed 60 stores, and
Macy's
and Kmart are closing all these
Kmart
stores.
all over the place,
They're
yeah.
called the anchor tenants. And that in real estate, I mean, that's as good
They're
as
hurting.
gold.
You look
So
at all the
they'll
Best
likely-
Buys and Circuit Cities, and I mean, every industry is
So
not spared.
would you look at this and go, maybe there's something else we could do here? What do you think's going to happen with these big locations?
Big box will probably turn into more of the industrial or warehousing.
Warehousing.
Yeah. So, that e-commerce, it's starting to shift a little bit away from Amazon. A lot of people are robbing and duplicating, while the lion's share of the work or the sales are relative to the e-commerce. But a lot of the other folks are coming to the table and selling online, making it a lot easier. So they need places for warehouse.
Yeah, somebody did say recently in one of our shows that that's going to be the next opportunity is delivery. Everybody wants everything delivered.
Well, and it's a real problem in multifamily. It's from a management standpoint, it's a nightmare because we don't have sufficient real estate to handle all the packages. So we've all had a little bit of
I mean,
difficulty.
the packages that are getting delivered to the
That's
tenants.
that's a
dealing
new
with
thing.
that.
You have 1,222 units. You've got thousands of packages coming.
Well, what
for those
about
people.
Whole Foods with Amazon buying them? Amazon now has little cubicles, and you can get your packages delivered to Whole Foods.
It's
Yeah.
a distribution hub
Yeah.
for them. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, but to
brilliant.
answer your question, Kim, it's happening with banks too. Nobody's going into banks anymore.
Yeah.
And I know, I was on that banking call with you guys, and he said that, gosh, in 10 years, all those corner banks will be gone too. So you're going to see a big shift, I think, personally. But
in bricks and mortar,
I
as they call
do,
it.
yeah, as bricks and mortar.
So before we complete the show, we're talking about 1,200 units and all this and banks and big bucks, but we all have to start somewhere. So how did you get started? What was your first investment?
Yeah, well, so at the very end of the day, as you guys know, people need housing, period, right? And they either can afford a house or not. And they might even be able to afford a house, but they may not want to. And that's what we're seeing now is, people are moving to where jobs are. And so they want to stay mobile, and they're not as loyal as they were.
Which is also a key of where you buy is where there are
Correct.
jobs.
Yeah. Right. So if somebody moves to San Francisco, let's say, for a job, they may not like the job, and they may say, I'm going to try it for 6 months or a year, right? And they may move to Atlanta. And so they're living in smaller properties, where the rents are cheaper. And, but for me, I started with a 2-bedroom, 2-bath. And
Where was this?
In Seattle area. And, had a renter. I was cash flowing $100 a month. And, that is the model. That will always be. Right now, they say they're calling it a renter nation, where home ownership is at 61%. It was at 69 at one point.
That's when Bush tried to push home ownership,
He
which
did.
collapsed the
That's
market.
exactly. Everybody thinks it's Obama, but it was actually Bush. Bush pushed home ownership. They got all the way up to 69%.
And they dropped the interest rates to get them in.
That's right.
So, Leslie, how did you get started?
My first real estate investment was a 2-bedroom, 1-bath condo in Vegas.
In Vegas.
In Vegas, and it was interesting
How much
because
was it?
I had it was $120,000, and that was just before the market started to turn, and I lost my shorts for a while. Key is managing around it. I actually didn't manage it for myself, even though I knew how to manage. Being so far away, what was important to me,
Because you were living where? Phoenix?
Arizona. What was important to me is that I had somebody who could watch it and manage it properly, and so I third-party managed that through somebody who was local. Even though I knew how to do it,
Right.
they knew how to do it better because they were
Very
there.
good.
And
lesson
that's a
to learn.
really good point, because when we started, and it was as we started getting more and more units, we were traveling all the time, and we didn't know anything about property management, and we brought in a property management company, and strangely enough, every month we broke even, strangely enough, and the money kept going out, and we didn't know where it was going because we didn't have any expertise in property management at that time. And so it's a great point that you
Trust
make.
but
yeah.
verify.
Yeah, yeah.
So once again, for me, it was a little 1-bedroom, 1-bath condo on the beach in Maui. Everybody said they don't exist, but the whole property was in foreclosure. So I got it for $18,000. The guy, the owner financed it at $16,000, owner finance, and I gave him a credit card for $2,000. And I made $25 a month. But this is the point, ladies and gentlemen. That's how I started. The lesson I learned is exactly what Leslie talking about. The property was too far away. It was on Maui. I lived in Honolulu. Something went wrong. I had to go to the airport, climb on the plane, fly to Maui, rent a car, drive out to the property, yell and scream, and come back. Whole day's work was gone for $25 a month. And then the tenant moved out because they were upset with me. And that was a thing. So Kim and I had a rule when we started off. The property is 1 hour away by driving, no more. The point here is this. The reason Kim and I are financially free is because we started doing small.
Yeah.
Today, thanks to Kenny and Leslie, we have about 6,500 units. It's hundreds of thousands of dollars a month coming in, much of it tax-free. Our return on investment is infinite. How is it infinite, Kim?
Because we take the money out. We buy the property. Kenny and Leslie and their team improve the income and improve the property, improve the value of the property. We pull that money out.
You refinance it.
We refinance it, get our money out.
That's the NOI that you've increased the rents on it.
So we pull that money out that we originally invested, so we have no money into the deal, but we still have the property and we still have the cash flow. And that's the formula the four of us use.
And every year that money goes up because every year we keep, in fact, it gets so bad when Kenny gives me a huge check, I say, what am I going to do with this money, Kenny? Find me another deal, right?
That's right.
And one other point is, you talk about the cash flow quadrant, ESB&I, employee, self-employed, big business, and investor. We were in the S quadrant of apartments, and I couldn't manage all of the, I could only manage so much. And so it got to the point where we weren't buying any more property because I couldn't manage anymore because I was an S. And so when we met Ken, he's like, well, that's what I do. And so now we had somebody that could manage and invest and professional and very aligned in our philosophy. So then we moved into the B quadrant of apartments.
So once again, I want to thank both Kenny and Leslie. Thank you for your time. Thanks for sharing your wisdom, which is part of the Rich Dad way of looking at things. And really, thank you very much. And when we come back, we'll be going to Ask Robert.
You're listening to the Rich Dad Radio Show with Robert Kiyosaki.
Don't be like Charlie. Charlie is that do-it-yourselfer who does himself in. Do-it-yourself is good for tile and grout. It is not good for asset protection. Charlie thought he'd save a few dollars forming his LLC online. With no guidance, he did it wrong. When he sold the property, he lost thousands and thousands of dollars. He did himself in by trying to do it himself. Don't burn yourself. Use Corporate Direct to set up and maintain your LLCs and corporations. Corporate Direct is owned and operated by attorney and Rich Dad advisor Garrett Sutton. Garrett wrote the bestsellers Loopholes of Real Estate and Start Your Own Corporation. He is Robert Kiyosaki's attorney for asset protection. He and his team will do it right. Visit them at corporatedirect.com or call 800-600-1760. Mention Rich Dad and receive $100 off your formation fee. That's corporatedirect.com, corporatedirect.com.
Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad Advisors have a great gift for you. Visit richdadadvisors.com and receive 5 free reports on business and investing success. 5 free reports that can help you right now. And while there, check out the Author's Choice audio series. Audio is a great way to learn. And for as little as 99 cents, you can download key chapters from all the Rich Dad Advisor books. You can listen to The Myths and Magic of Real Estate Investing, 7 Steps to Limited Liability, The 4 Pillars of Investing, Team Code of Honor, or The Psychology of Debt, among other great audios. For pennies, you can power up your skills for getting out of the rat race. So please visit richdadadvisors.com for your 5 free reports and your powerful and affordable audio chapters. That's richdadadvisors.com for great information that can help you right now.
Your financial education continues. Now back to Robert Kiyosaki and the Rich Dad Radio Show.
Welcome back, Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. Today we're talking about the difference between a stock investor and a real estate investor. So you can listen to the Rich Dad Radio program anytime and anywhere on iTunes or Android, and all of our programs are archived at richdadradio.com. We archive them so you can listen to this again and maybe it'll sink in. But most importantly, if this is an important show, you have friends who want to invest in real estate, I would get together, listen to this program, and discuss it. So we're going to the most popular part of our program. It's called Ask Robert. You can send your questions to richdadradio.com. We're very fortunate. Both Kenny and Leslie have the time to stick around for this for the next 10 minutes. And so we'll go into the first question. So Melissa, what's the first question?
Our first question today comes from John in Thousand Oaks, California. Favorite book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It says, Robert and Kim, you always say that making mistakes makes you smarter. So what was your greatest mistake in real estate? How did you overcome it? What fears did you have to overcome? And how did it make you a better investor and entrepreneur?
So can I say something? No matter where I go in the world, most of these people come up, they all want to know about my biggest mistakes. I make mistakes every day. And our school system does a terrible job telling you that making mistakes is bad. I made so many mistakes, it's incredible. But I will say this, I have never lost money in real estate. Never. I've lost money in business, but never in real estate. And that's why having this program today is because many people think that investing in real estate is the same as investing in the stock market. And they're two different complete animals. So the point here is this. If you don't want to make mistakes, in 1973, I took my first real estate course, and I have never stopped learning. And that's why we have Ken McElroy's books, The ABCs of Real Estate Investing, ABCs of Property Management, and Advanced Guide to Real Estate Investing. That's where we get infinite returns, and when we make money with nothing. But you've got to study to do that, and most people are too effing lazy to do that. They just want to make money, and then they lose money. And the problem with stocks versus real estate, you can get out of stocks really quickly. It's called liquidity. You cannot get out of real estate if it goes bad. And the key to property is management of the property, not buying or selling it. You can make a bad buy, but you can fix it also. But if you can't manage it, it's gone.
And I did write about one of my biggest mistakes in my book, Rich Woman. And the mistake I made is that this was a bigger deal than I had ever done before. We were living in Phoenix. The property was in Florida.
Right next to
Trump's
Doral
Country Club. And fear got in my way, and I analyzed this thing to death. And I was so afraid of making a mistake. I was so afraid of losing money. And finally, when I realized that I lost the deal. I basically lost the deal because I took way too much time, way too much money. Analysis paralysis is what I had, and it was all based on fear, and I didn't trust what I knew.
And if I could remind you of something, you hired these attorneys.
Yes, I did.
One in Tucson, of all places.
Yeah,
I don't know why in Tucson.
To deal with Florida.
And the other attorney was in Florida, and the costs just went through the roof as these two attorneys had a field day on fees. So that's why it takes a while to learn that stuff.
Yeah.
I didn't know why'd you hire that Tucson attorney. Never understood why.
It was recommended, but the point is this. I lost that deal. I learned the lesson, and I was so upset with myself that within 2 months, I had purchased a better deal, almost the same type of property, better numbers, better deal, 3 blocks from my house.
But the thing
and
was,
today,
all that analysis made you to understand this was a better deal.
Yeah, I knew this type of property up one side and down another, and so today it's still one of our best performing properties. Right. So you always want to. The mistakes are priceless. The mistakes are. If you're afraid of making mistakes, do not get into real estate. Do not get into business.
Kenny, you ever made mistakes?
Yeah, of course. I've lost some people's money too. Same situation.
You only telling me now?
Surprise!
Actually, that's why I'm here. We were doing condo conversions back in 2005, and the market changed and people couldn't buy condos anymore, and we were stuck with a big condo project. So. Yeah.
Plus, you had some water faucets that blew up or something.
Yeah, that was another mistake. So there's all kinds of.
About multifamily, it's multiple losses.
There's honestly, if you're in property management, that's actually you're dealing with all the issues on a daily basis on every project.
Which is a really good point, because when we have gone with you to different cities to look at property, you don't line up a real estate broker to show us properties. You line up a property management company to talk to about properties. Why is that?
Yeah, because obviously you have to look at their intention. So the broker is just there to sell something. The manager, whoever is going to get that project, they're actually going to have to be the ones that are standing in the fire doing the
And they don't
work.
care which property you buy.
Correct.
They just want to manage
Yes.
whichever one you buy.
So we like to bring them along so that so we're going to get real rents, real expenses, and they're going to talk
Real
to us
numbers.
objectively about what they can and can't do because their performance is on the line.
All you listen out there, I have a very personal friend. He's a property manager. And I said, "You got any good deals?" He says, "No, I've never seen a good deal." I said, "But he deals with people like Kim and I who have a lot of money and all this. We're always investing, but he cannot see it. He is a property manager, not an investor. Big difference." Next question, Melissa.
Our next question comes from Andrea in Texas. Favorite book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. She says, if the money or stock market crashes in 2018, is it still advisable to try and get into debt with real estate as a new investor?
I'm glad you asked that question. Please don't do it. I'm doing my best on this program to let people know the difference between a stock and real estate. Is there a big difference, Kenny?
It's a huge difference. One is so easy. Buying a stock is so
Idiots
easy.
can do it
I
every
can do
day.
it right now while we're on this show. Real estate is a team sport. It just is. Business and real estate investing is a team sport.
And investing is a business.
It is.
I mean,
yeah,
you become a business owner basically, or
Right.
self-employed.
And the reason we wanted Leslie on this program, not just Kenny, is because the real key is property management, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And if people don't have experience in that, that's where they lose or make it. That's a turning point.
100%. Market will only take you so far. If you want to count on the market taking you higher, you'll likely, even in a good market, if you're not managing right, you'll probably lose.
And somebody's going to steal from you. They always steal from you. Always something. There's so many things you don't know that you think you know. Get you. So please, buy Kenny's books. ABC's a Real Estate Investing, the Rich Dad Advisor's book. ABC's a Property Management. Advanced Guide to Real Estate. And his website is mccompanies.com. Please don't buy real estate if you're an amateur. Next question.
Our next question comes from Alan in Kentucky. Favorite book, Unfair Advantage. It says, Robert, I've read almost all of your books, and I know you always talk about buying properties. What are your thoughts on building your own all in one location so that they are close by and easier to manage?
Are you a builder is my question. How many properties have you built? Have you built multifamily? I mean, are you a contractor? Are you successful? Are you rich as a contractor? What do you think, Kenny?
Well, it actually has more to do with what the cost of the property you would buy if it's existing and the rent, and the cost of something that you would build and the rent. So those are the two things you would look at.
So you'd compare what it costs to build versus buy existing.
So if I can buy a place, let's say a home for $100,000 and the rent's $1,500, or I can build something for $200,000 and the rent's $2,000, it's better to buy something existing, right? So you just have to look at the numbers, and that will determine. Like right now, prices on existing properties are rising so fast, which is the reason there's building. So you don't just make the choice. In other words, it's actually more economical right now to build than it is to buy.
So let me just say this much. The difference between an investor, a property manager, and a builder, they're very different people, different skill sets, different things like this. In a hot market, when Kim and I were building our house in Phoenix, they couldn't get subs. You ever have bad subs on a project?
Subcontractors, yeah. That's when there's a hot market and all the subcontractors are working for the general contractors.
And they couldn't get materials. And the cost of materials was through the roof.
Well, there's a lot more risk with building for sure.
I remember when Kim and I were just putting addition onto our house, we couldn't get any subs, and this cast of characters came in.
They were a cast of characters.
Holy mackerels! I thought they were from the Addams family or something, and they were hanging drywall, with a gypsum board. I hung gypsum board as a kid, and I could hang it better than these guys. And eventually we had to tear it all apart and put it back up again. Any comments there, Leslie?
In our line of business, we always have to have those reliable subcontractors, but they become fewer and farther between as the market starts to turn like now, as there's more building going on and construction costs rising. Those folks are flocking to where they can make the most profit.
Correct.
So if somebody was considering building for the first time,
Start small.
What's your advice?
I definitely would partner with somebody who's had a proven track record.
Yeah.
And
Good
your
point.
partner is Ross, is a builder, right?
He is. He's a general contractor. Yeah.
So understand it's a team sport, you guys, but you've got to be a good team member, and most people aren't, and that's why they don't get the good deals. So I thank you, both Leslie and Kenny. Thanks for your sharing your wisdom. For those of you who are listening, you can submit your questions to Ask Robert at Rich Dad Radio, and thank you for listening. The final word is there's a big difference between a stock investor and a real estate investor. Thank you for listening.